Premiering tonight on MSNBC, a new limited series called Field Reports with Paola Ramos explores the continued rightward drift in some places of Latino voters ahead of November's midterm elections.
I have 6 kids in total. The 2 little ones are currently homeschooling. I pulled them out of school 2020.
Why?
There was a lot going on, but 2020 for me was what I like to call my political awakening. I have never been politically inclined, ever. My father was, so I grew up hearing about a lot to do with politics. Possible communist takeover and all this craziness, but in my mind, I always thought, this is just my dad and his trauma, you know, from being a political prisoner. So I always shied away from that. I actually resented it. But I feel that 2020, there was no denying what was going on. And for me, it hit most with the children.
What are they learning here that they're not learning in school?
For me, it's safety. So I know that they are not going to learn certain impositions.
Like what?
For example, I don't have anything against the LGBTQ community at all. I don't think the kids should have it pushed on them.
Such a fascinating series. Paola joins us now. It's great to have you with us. Boy, there's so much in there to talk about. And one of the big themes of the piece in this limited series that you put together that will air tonight on MSNBC is not treating Latino voters and Latinos in America as this monolith, which frankly a lot of progressives I think have in the past and make assumptions about their views on issues like immigration and others. What did you find in your conversations?
Of course, I think that's the big story, right? Donald Trump did do 10 points better in 2020 than he did in 2016, right? And I think many people dismissed that, right? Many people just saw the banner of Joe Biden winning, that's 60% of Latino voters. But I think that 10% shift is really important. So when you go to a battleground state like Florida, when we think of 2020, we heard that story of communism every single day, right? Many Latino voters chose Trumpism because of that fear and because of that trauma. What we found this time is that today's polarized environment, right? The disinformation, the culture wars that we see every day on TV, the extremism, all of that is feeding off that fear of communism and disinformation. And specifically, you see that in the classrooms, right? That's the clip that we just saw right now, where what we found is that a lot of Latina moms are now finally being awakened through these culture wars, right? They're taking these wars to the school board meetings, to the classrooms. You hear them regurgitating many of the same talking points that white moms do, right? They're against critical race theory. They're against LGBTQ issues. They're against the COVID-19 restrictions. But in this case, that fear of communism makes it even more powerful, right? It makes the paranoia even more forceful because it's now communism infiltrating these classrooms. And that is, I think, a trend that we really have to keep an eye out.
It's important to recognize what that is rooted in, where that fear of communism comes from, and then what do they believe practically? What does communism look like in the United States? What are they afraid of?
Of course, and I think that's the problem, right? They believe, and that's something that Republicans were really successful at, right? I mean, you know, they really exploited that fear of communism and trauma that so many Cubans, my family's Cuban, I mean, many folks in my family believe that as well, this exploitation of that fear. And they made many people believe that a vote for Joe Biden was a vote for communists. Communism is nowhere close in the United States, as we know. But someone like the woman that we just saw on the screen, her father fled Cuba. She literally took her kids out of school in 2020 because she was scared that communism was infiltrating this country. She believes when you say things like critical race theory, she will tell you that is an indoctrination, no? That is an agenda that is being pushed out. And I think the question for us is that paranoia of communism really blinding them so much that they're unable to see sort of like the real problems in this country? Or is the question of communism and this trauma simply a facade for a deeply rooted problem that we have in the Latino community, forcing us to ask questions like, is there racism among us? No? Do we also feel white supremacy? Are we also part of the problem? I think that's sort of what we have to wrestle with.
Do you think that part of this is an undercurrent of social conservatism that hasn't been acknowledged by the Democratic political class in making the assumption that Latino voters are more progressive?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that we found throughout the entire trip is that almost every single person that we talked to, including the women that you saw on the screen, every single one of them was a former Democrat, believed that they had to be a Democrat. At one point, they had voted for Obama. I also even found people that volunteered for Bernie Sanders. At one point, they believed that they didn't have the space to sort of entertain their more conservative values in this Democratic Party, right? They didn't fit the specific Democratic Party of what this party is asking Latino voters to look like, not to feel like, to talk like. And I think that is at least the heart of what is driving many of these Latino voters, this disenchantment with the Democratic Party. And yes, I think these culture wars and what you're seeing now is sort of uncovering these very innate social conservative values that many Latinos do have. And maybe now with Trump, they feel okay saying that with pride. I think that's a shift.
Michael Steele, it's so fascinating to watch the trend lines here. President George W. Bush won a much larger share of Latino voters than previous Republicans had. There was a feeling that maybe Latino voters could swing to the Republican column, that it swings back toward Barack Obama, away from Donald Trump. But in 2020, as Paola says, they went back in the direction of a Republican in Donald Trump.
We are light years away from George Bush at this point. And I think Paola's piece really exposes that. And so that's what I want to ask you. I actually want to focus on the point you just made, Paola, about these voters wanting to entertain their democratic values. How does that look? I mean, have they always been anti-LGBTQ, or are they, suddenly discovering that? I mean, what were those values that suddenly now have this fresh, look or feel to them because of Donald Trump? Because I would think that there's always been some space there where those concerns relative to Black folks and CRT and the telling of our history versus the telling of Hispanic histories, or the relationship, with the broader community of gay and lesbian people. I mean, I don't know what this woman thinks her children are going to encounter when they leave her home. I mean, if she's not, so what does that mean?
As a gay woman myself, right, having this conversation with someone that, in my eyes, perhaps felt uncomfortable in front of someone like me. I mean, it was a hard conversation to have. But I think that's the question, right? No one in my face told me that they were against LGBTQ issues, right? No one told me that they were against myself. No one said that they were racist or they didn't understand Latinos. The talking point, again, was we are doing this because we want to protect the children, right? We are doing this because communism is infiltrating our classes. They are indoctrinating our children to be gay, right? So I think, to your point, it's hard to understand if the root is truly that these are conservative values that have always been there, or simply that they're going back to a card that they know how to use, which is the communism card. And I'm in nowhere to sort of speak for them, no? But I think that's the nuance that we have to really understand, because not understanding that means not understanding the largest minority voting bloc in this country, right? And it means not understanding that there is a possibility that as we shift to this majority-minority country, no? And as this assumption that Latino voters will take us to this country where we do talk about racism openly, where we do acknowledge and approach and welcome people like myself that are gay, if Latinos suddenly turn the other way, that assumption of this American story is completely distorted.
You also, in the series, dig into the important question of immigration and the nuance there. You speak with the Republican nominee for Florida's 13th U.S. congressional district about one of her top campaign issues. Let's listen.
As a candidate, when you're making these, what it seems like, without data, baseless allegations that child migrants are crossing the border because they are being exploited sexually, what information are you giving your constituents to make actually informed decisions on that? Yeah.
I've been down to the border 3 times. I've talked to countless activists and organizations. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to say that it's not an issue, I absolutely disagree with it. It is an issue. I'm just saying to paint the whole, of course it's an issue. But I do think that,
but to paint the whole U.S.-Mexico border issue, doesn't that take away from the actual humanitarian crisis that's happening there?
Because what happens is when you're encouraging people to come here illegally, they're exploited in the process. But to go back to what you're saying, whether it's 200 kids or 2,000,
of course,
it's too many.
I'd be interested to hear your reflections on that conversation, because as you know so well, we've talked to many Latino voters and politicians who say Democrats take us for granted on the issue of immigration. We came here legally. We think people should wait for their place in line and come here legally as well. And they don't like what they're seeing at the border either. What did you find in your conversations on that issue of immigration?
With someone like her, I mean, she has made, again, and this is Ana Paulina Luna, she is a Mexican-American that's running in District 13th in Florida. She has made the pillar of her campaign immigration, right? But not talking about immigration as the humanitarian crisis that is ongoing. She's actually sort of framed it around this idea that children are being sex trafficked at the border. That is her main message, which is a reflection of a QAnon obsession, as you know, that has been spreading around for many years, right? This idea of painting the border as these, Democrats that are pushing children around, which again is not necessarily based on facts. And so, to your point, this proves that even within Latinos, there's a big divide about how you see the U.S.-Mexico border. And I think the question comes down to Democrats, right? Even something like Title 42, it's even hard for me to say, like, are they for it or are they against it? No? Do they want to sort of fix this asylum crisis or not? And I think this shows you the sort of questions that they're struggling with. You have two sections of Latino voters in completely opposite sides of the spectrum. And I don't know if the strategy of tiptoeing around these issues will actually work in the end. No? Do you go for someone like Ana Paulina Luna, or do you go for progressive Latinos from Arizona?